Hello, Raphael. How are you?
Doing well yourself?
I'm doing well. So, folks, if you're joining me today we have a guest, a friend of mine, Rafael Torres, and we've been talking about this for a while now, have we? It's been like what,
Yes.
6, 7 months now,
Long time
and
coming. Long time
a long
coming.
time coming. So finally, we managed to get Raphael, and actually, I think it was on me as well. We tend to miss each other. All right. So, Raphael, what is digital mindset?
For one, I think it's almost a alternative to saying agile mindset, because
Okay.
people are more receptive to digital because they've already accepted it as part of their lives. And agile is oftentimes still an outsider. So
Okay.
when I say digital mindset, you're thinking about the agile values and principles embodied in digital behaviors. It applies more at a micro level versus a macro. So it would be focused on individual behaviors and then how those interactions and those behaviors affect a team or an organization. So if you think about practices within Agile,
Okay.
you think practices like daily stand up, you think your interactions and discussions with each other, writing efficient user stories, all the basics.
Mm-hmm.
When you apply that same kind of thought process to a digital mindset, you start thinking about how they leverage their collaboration space in the same way that they would communicate with each other in a room. In this highly distributed world, by default, you're not going to have a lot of co-location, especially 2020 caught everyone off guard and taught everyone that they needed to learn how to work in a distributed environment. And so you think about practices like defaulting to open. And what I mean by that is don't create a document in a space that your teammates don't have access to because you want them to not see it until you've made it perfect, right? So start from the onset using digital behaviors that help to, increase your openness and your collaboration, increase transparency in general. So being able to access things and see what's really happening in a space. And then using integrations and plugins within your ecosystem of tools in this digital space to make things easier. So the same way that you have agile practices that you go shu ha ri, you think about it in a similar kind of context in that way. So shu is follow the rules, where you guys can make a collaboration agreement, like your digital collaboration agreement. The same way that you have a working agreement, essentially. You agree on where you're going to put files explicitly. You agree how you're going to share information explicitly. You agree on how you're going to work with your partners and vendors specifically, right? You're really outlining all these things about how you're going to work together. Where are you going to track your work? Are you using Jira? Are you using Planner? Are you using Monday.com? What are you using to track your work? And make an agreement on these specific things that you're leveraging. Because I like to compare it to, imagine if you were building a crew to go build a house. And I used to kind of do this in college, where they would tell me and say, hey, we have to do this task. We're going to go out and do this work. I need you to bring a crew of people. If I didn't tell that crew of people what we were doing, everyone would show up with different things. I'd have one person who bring a hammer, one person who bring a drill, one person who doesn't bring anything, one person that doesn't wear the right shoes, like doesn't have a hard hat. Like, if you're not explicit in how you're going to leverage these things together, then you're setting yourself up for failure down the line.
Now, what problem were you trying to solve?
What started me down the journey of even getting to agile coaching and this digital kind of mindset focus is the patterns and issues that occur when you're trying to implement or get value from some kind of technical, like you're using technology to get value to somebody. And you're using Scrum or Kanban or whatever to get to that value, right? You're creating flow through some kind of human system. The problems were never the tools. The problems are never the technology. The technology is just there and it works. It's zeros and ones. Really, there's no other things between, right? But humans are extremely complex, and how we interact with each other is at times completely nonsensical. So what attracted me to it was it's kind of this bridge between the two, right? So how we use these computers in front of us and how we use these tools that are built on the hardware it is a medium of communication that people still treat like, I guess you could say, like, they're going back to the tools example, they treat everything like a hammer. But in reality, if you really learn how to use these things together, you can become like a surgeon with your time. And that's really what we want. You want people to be surgical in their use of time and in the technology that they use for those tools. Otherwise, it can be a waste, right? So if you have a really well fleshed out team, you have, let's give an example. You got a Scrum team that's past their 6th sprint mark, and they have an established cadence, the velocity and the capacity are all there. It's all, you know it all, and you have some, curveballs thrown in. Somebody decides to leave the firm, and that person was your most experienced developer. You can't have a conversation with them. They're gone. They built half your code base and they didn't comment anything. None of the stories were linked to any of the documentation. I don't know where some of the code base is. I have to go find it. Establishing these practices as an underlying DNA of a team and of an organization creates a really strong backbone that allows you to work through that human complexity component. Because if you get into a world where you don't have time to focus on how you guys work together and you're only focused on survival, there's no chance that you're going to grow as a team.
So examples of digital mindset.
So on the technical side, I would give an example of making sure that the way that you're using your applications, so like if you're using Slack or Teams, you have it somehow integrated into the way that you're using your work tracking products and the way that you're connecting that work tracking product to your code base. So I'll talk about what I'm most familiar with, which would be the Atlassian product suite. So, and the importance of this is I, as a developer, want to be able to get to the code and the documentation without talking to anyone so that I can implement a new feature branch or whatever. And the way that you can do that is all their products are integrated. If I go and look at a story and I'm like, okay, all right, this story makes sense. This is what's in the backlog. Joe's out of office, whatever. I got to go do this work. I go to the story. I get my context of where it's coming from. I can go and click right on in the story to the development branch where work is actually happening. I can go and pull down that code and start doing my own local changes to be implemented in the future. And then I can go right from there, right from either the code or the story into the documentation that's relevant to me. So you have an ecosystem all in there that is really powerful, that you don't have to talk to other people to do your work. So that asynchronous component is what gives companies advantages, because if you have to have a meeting or you have to go and ask someone questions about something, what happens when the person's not there? Or what happens when you need to move faster, right? You can't just wait for a person's calendar to open up to start working. Now, when you take that work suite, that ecosystem of how you're doing your work, and you combine it with something like Microsoft Teams or Slack, they have integrations that you can push and deploy code from Microsoft Teams. So like you have a CI/CD pipeline type situation in your DevOps world that you can leverage your main communication tool to do that work. And to close that loop, you can integrate Teams or Slack or whatever with Jira so that you could take a comment or a thought. If someone writes a user story example in Teams, you could send it right to Jira, right to your backlog.
Let's talk about a non-technical example.
Yeah, so one thing that is a struggle that I've seen repeatedly is when you do an organizational change and you have a bunch of business-only folks smashed with some tech folks,
okay,
and you're trying to form a team, right? Extreme knowledge gaps. You have one that's very business-oriented and understands how money is made, essentially. And you have one that makes the lights stay on and does cool things with the lights. So that's the combination that you have there. And you have the background of business coming from a space that they used to tell the nerds what to do, right? So there's natural friction there as the roles are kind of reversed and smashed together, where you're going to have to decide on what you're doing together to do that work. digital collaboration agreements, one of the best ways to do that, because I'm going to guess that the business folks have a lot of knowledge that the tech folks don't, and vice versa. So if you can agree on how you're going to start sharing this knowledge through your digital collaboration agreements, like we're going to get together and do knowledge transfer sessions, we're going to use Mural or Miro, whatever. I want to do a brain dump and talk about the problems that we're solving, or I'm a product owner and I'm going to bring all these new folks into a group with my Scrum Master, and we're going to talk about the problems that are available for us to solve and what we're going to focus on strategically. If you want to have a good foundation to do that, leveraging your digital collaboration agreements and making sure that the business folks and the tech folks agree on where we're going to put our information, what tools are we going to use to collaborate, how can I, as business person X, go look at the code base, or where do I go to go review this stuff so that I can kind of look through and talk through logic with you, because that's what you want on a healthy team, right? It doesn't matter that they don't necessarily know everything, but they need to be involved as they build things together, because you have such, intrinsic knowledge in these individuals that they need to find a medium to collaborate. So you got to create a space for them to do that. And just like this, with only Zoom, it doesn't work well, because many people are not just conversational or audio based, right? So they need something to look at. You need to be able to put your thoughts out on virtual paper, if you will. And this is why I always say using Mural or using Miro or whatever is getting on the same virtual page. For the business side, it's creating transparency into a world that used to be a black hole for them. So the amount of learning that happens when you start using this kind of behavior inside of a new team or an organization that is going through a transformation is huge. So I think that's kind of like the business example. Kind of underlying all of that is you're trying to build a core language, right? Okay. So imagine if everyone in a company of 30 to 100,000 people all had the same base way of working. They all know that they're going to leverage this tool. This is what they use to work together. They know that they use integrations so that they can make their work life easier. And they know that they agree upon a way of sharing files so that it's very well understood. Even at a base layer, that allows you to move so much faster as a company, like even any group of people. If you can't agree on or understand the value in going to the same tool cabinet and using those tools together, instead of duplicating things a bunch of different ways across your different tools, you're kind of missing out on the speed that you can get from that, but also the centralization of a shared mindset in your digital world. So when I step into a new space outside of the space I'm coming from, I still have a core understanding in language and how you leverage your tools together. It would be like going from someone using text messages and texting me all the time to handing me stone tablets. That's what how I would compare email. Email to me is a stone tablet, and other apps and chat applications now. You're into the future. If your organization is heavily reliant on email and you wonder why you have so many silos, you need to start looking at your communication patterns, because that informs how you collaborate.
If somebody's interested in having this conversation with you further, how do they contact you?
Oh yeah, reach out via LinkedIn. Just send me a LinkedIn message. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I think my photos, it'll look like me.
So it's not something different.
Yeah, I know. Rafael J. Torres is what you'll find on there.
Okay.
Just Rafael Torres. You might find my dad or other random Latin people.
Or we may have conversation with your dad about it.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be like, yeah, you definitely want to be talking to my son. I don't want to talk to you right now.
Well, Rafael, I think it's a pleasure talking to you. It's always intriguing to learn about this. In my past working with Rafael, I've come to learn a lot of stuff, especially around, what he just talked about, the digitalization of collaboration, right? And that has indeed perked my interest. That's the reason why I've got Raphael here, sharing his ideas, his thoughts, and his viewpoint, so that we can get better at what we do. So again, thank you, Raphael.
Thanks for inviting me. This was really fun.